issues. With the interfaith community, you can implement certain projects. So I think we have to differentiate between two of them.
Well, I think the differentiation I was seeking from you was, should the interfaith dialogue be based on a notion of dual critique, dual, simultaneous, inter-effective critique of the self and the other, without privileging either? Or should it be a one-way street where you submit yourself for further interrogation so you can be socially accepted, and the people who have the power to remove the stigma from your forehead can do so? All right? They're two different things. And the second is, can anybody empower or authorize himself or arrogate to himself or herself the ability to do so if they're not done homework, if they're not produced a scholarship and knowledge? Those are the questions I'm asking. It's not the question of desirability, it's the question of skill and doing the job we need to do in that regard. So it has become a one-way street, what's supposed to be a two-way street. But let me ask another question, from both of your experience point of view. Which groups have you been engaged with in terms of interfaith dialogue? What groups have you engaged in?
Well, we have actually several projects at the Islamic Society of North America. With the Protestant, for example, represented by the National Council of Churches, we have several projects. We have regular meetings and things like that. I mentioned one project is the God is One project. In the fall, actually, within ISNA annual convention, we are hosting a Christian to come to our annual convention and to do programs there, and the National Council of Churches and the Presbyterian Church USA, actually they are taking leads on this. With the Catholic, with the United States Conference of the Catholic Bishops, we have dialogue going on for the last 9 years, discussing certain issues. With other group, with the Churches Center for Theology and Public Policy, it is also a Presbyterian center. We have also joint projects actually we're working on. One of them is the Muslim Christian Initiative on the Nuclear Weapons Danger. Other interreligious projects that we're working on is the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. And ISNA actually is a founding member of this organization, and as I mentioned previously, the organization has grown. We have 120 participating members, including the Evangelical and Southern Baptist and other notable groups.
And that's very impressive, and I applaud you and other colleagues for doing this thing. But if I notice it correctly, most of the interfaith dialogue is Christian-Muslim dialogue, or occasionally Christian-Muslim-Jewish dialogue, right? Now, I'll concede to you in 1 second. There is a very big issue with the Hindu community.
Right.
There is a potential issue with some of the elements of the Buddhist community in different contexts. So, is it a correct impression on my part, we are only engaged with those communities who actually took the initiative to seek us out and almost coach us into playing the role that we are playing with them, and those who did not do it, we didn't do it with them?
Well, I think, as Ahmed mentioned, is that the idea of interfaith or interreligious dialogue or interreligious projects for the Muslim community is pretty new for the last just few years. And I think the time will come that the Muslim community would also engage in other religious communities, the Hindu and the Buddhist and other, and we started doing that actually. We started with the Jewish community. We had a program in the last year annual convention. 15 Jewish leaders came from across the nation and met with the 15 Muslim leaders for the whole day, and just to talk about issues and come up with a plan called 4042, to implement the specific projects. So this is just the beginning, but our hope is that to engage all the segments of the religious community in the interfaith programs.
Well, we need to differentiate between the national and the local levels. But I agree with you. I guess we are not engaged across the board with everybody. In fact, even among Muslims, Christians, Jews, sometimes based on the issue, you start seeing only just dual dialogue between Muslims and Christians, for example, or otherwise. Because when it becomes touchy a little bit, when you start talking about issues, although they have the religious connotation to them, but issues of the day, whether it's the occupation or otherwise, some of our friends in other faiths, they cease to come to these dialogues. When you talk about the issue of the war in Iraq or the issue of Palestine or certain issues, it becomes an issue that is divisive, unfortunately, rather than bringing people together. But I agree with you. We need to engage with others. At the local level, I think it is better than the national level. At the local level, you'll find the dialogue with the Buddhists and with the Sikh and with the Hindus and with the Christians and with the Jews and that kind of thing. I think we need to do a better job in working these one-on-one dialogue and collective dialogue. We have at certain times we invited the whole interfaith community to dialogue about certain issues, and we found some representatives of certain religions did not show up and did not come, making a political statement. Although, as you alluded in the beginning, this interfaith dialogue should break these barriers and allow us to start speaking freely.
But Dr. Akhlas, here's the issue. And again, correct me please, because you are the practitioners, I'm only a distant observer. It seems to me that the dialogue with Muslims, by mostly the Christian and sometimes the Jewish community, is invariably linked with demands for internal reform. Be that on the issue of women, on the issue of civil liberties, minority treatment, so on and so forth. What is happening right now in the United States is that number of churches